Hey YouTube, welcome to my collection. I'm very happy to share with you and talk about Star Wars. Please, come in.
Hello, YouTube. This is Jack. We're back with another Star Wars collections and displays. I have with me Jim, as always. Almost said my own name. Jim, hello there. We also have a collector with us today. His name is Alfonso. Alfonso, I'm going to give it over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where are you from, and just a little bit about your collection.
Well, hello. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here with you. I'm from Mexico City, and the collection is in Mexico City as well.
Beautiful.
The collection, it's. Do you want me to go a little bit when it started and just take it from there? Well, it started in 1978 when I saw Star Wars for the first time, and I've been an enthusiast since then. There's been some hiccups in the way, I guess, like any Star Wars collector, and dry periods, but I've never stopped being a fan and in a sense a collector. So the first item, which I wish I still had, was just after watching the movie. This one's 1978, because in Mexico, the movie was released in 77, December of 77, but I got to see it maybe, I would imagine January, March, maybe February of 78. And they would sell these bootleg lightsabers outside of the theater. And this was a flashlight, and they would put a plastic tube, and you would change like a plastic color
Gel.
piece on it, and it will change of color. And that was my first collectible. I wish I still had that one. That would be awesome to still have that one, but I played with it too much, and it was sort of gone. But so from there, I never stopped collecting, so this is the result of that experience of many years of really being excited about Star Wars, being excited about receiving a new toy whenever it was possible, and now that I'm older, trying to relieve some of it, and even going a little bit deeper into the story and the collectibles.
Great. We'll look forward to all that information. My first question right off the bat, how long did you wait in line that night to see the movie?
Well, I remember the expectation. I remember going with my parents, and in Mexico City, movies were huge at that time. So this was called the Hollywood movie theater, and the screen was huge. And I'll go a little bit into it about how the experience was, but. So what I do remember is that we tried to get tickets for when we wanted to go, but tickets were sold out. It was I didn't know the name Blockbuster, but I can relate to that now. And but finally, as I mentioned, maybe March, around that time, end of February, we could get tickets, and it was at night. And I remember waiting in the lobby of the theater, and it was packed. And there was cartoon cutouts of C-3PO and R2-D2. And that's the first two characters that I really ever get to see. And I remember those distinctly. I was 7 years old, about 8 years old. So almost, and so I remember everyone walking into the theater. And then, as I mentioned, the theaters were huge. You had different tiers, and then what I remember very well from that time was the letters when the movie started and the music, and it seemed that the letters came out of the floor, and that was just mind blowing. Since then, I remember that very well. I remember the X-wings at the end, and after that things were never the same. Then, of course, very soon after that, first encounters of the third type came out, and it was a disappointment for me Now I love that movie, but at the time I remember going back and waiting it to be Star Wars.
Yeah, not Cowboys and Indians enough. It was almost too sci-fi, almost too artsy.
Exactly. So I mentioned that just to talk about that 8-year-old looking at that movie and changing everything and the way I saw uh, theater and the way I saw different things and as I mentioned, my first toy was the lightsaber, but in Mexico, toys were not uh, uh, available in a big scale. Oddly enough, we had the 12-inch by Lili Ledy figures. But the interesting thing about that is I just learned from a friend of mine, which he's like my Star Wars guru, and Luis Villagomez. He told me that actually the first toys from Lili Ledy, the 12-inch, were released before the early bird arrived in the US. And this is because they got the license in Mexico for the 12-inch, and they use bodies of different dolls like Barbies and Kens. So they were very fast, and they could deliver those toys. And he has all the information in which these toys were released earlier. So he always says, Lili Ledy shot first. So
Interesting.
it's interesting.
Yeah, that is.
I'm curious. So your visit to Star Wars, when you saw that movie, was it the English speaking version or did it have subtitles? Was
Subtitles.
it dubbed in there?
Yes, and it had subtitles. And in Spain, they would translate the movies, but in Mexico, they would release them in their original language and with subtitles. And I guess that's one of my guesses on why movies in the 70s took so long to reach Mexico or other areas. And my guess is they were working on the subtitles and all this extra work that had to go into movies. This is just a guess, but I would think so because, as I mentioned, Star Wars, if I'm correct, was not released until December 24th, 77 in Mexico.
Interesting, interesting. Well, we've got a little bit of a peek at your overall collection there, which is pretty impressive on a couple of different levels. First of all, it seems to be the entire room dedicated
Yes,
to Star Wars.
yeah, I
It
can give
looks
you
like all beautiful
later.
cabinetry, oak and such, with glass shelves in there. So we're very impressed with what we've seen so far. Let me start off with our typical questions. What is it that you're collecting? Action figures, vehicles, helmets, lightsabers, comics?
Well, it's a mixture of everything. Uh, if I can go back a little bit in time, I, I I collected the original Kenner line originally, and it was very tough to do so in Mexico because you didn't have the smaller scale until Jedi. There's Empire. There's an interesting thing about some Empire figures being released with Lili Ledy, but they didn't come out until Jedi, which it was for me the end of the run. I was already growing up at that time. I did have those figures, but for me it was the end of the run. So when New Hope came out, we couldn't get the small figures, only the US. So it was awesome when a friend of yours or your parents had to do whatever trip to the US and they could get you some figures back. So you would be very excited, and maybe we'll get you 2 or 3 figures and an X-wing and then maybe a TIE fighter, or there was even some contraband. Some places that they would bring those figures in Mexico, but my parents wouldn't buy them. They were very straight on that, and so for me, my friends could sometimes go to these places and buy them. So I got very jealous about it, but I would have to wait. And the first things I got was an X-wing and some of the first 12 figures, um, and some of the Tops trading cards, which I really loved. So at the end of the day, I started getting all these figures together. I would trade with my friends. No guns sometimes, not incomplete figures, but I played with them a lot. And I had my Vader later on, or my current cases, and I would try to collect them and use the stickers. So at the end of the run, I did have all the figures until I'm talking now moving forward in time. And at the end of Jedi, I did have all the Kenner figures until this is just before the last 17, which I did get the last Ewoks, that some argue that if they're really the last 17. So and then I went to boarding school in the US. And the last thing I got, and this is like my first run, and I'm sorry for the introduction, but I'm moving forward to your question on what I collect and why. But moving a little bit forward, I purchased I went into Walmart, and I was being dropped at boarding school, and I saw the B-wing, and I was just crazy about it because I had seen it in a catalog. I was going into 7th grade, so it was not cool anymore to collect Star Wars, but I really got excited about looking at the B-wing. And I asked my parents if they could buy it and bring it back to Mexico. They said, no way, we're not putting. So I begged, and they finally bought the B-wing and brought it back to Mexico. And I got by mail the Emperor. And I remember I had it in my jacket, and nobody saw it at the boarding school. But when I returned to Mexico, my enthusiasm for toys was gone. I loved my toys, but it was gone. So I put them away, and that B-wing was never played with. It was just saved. And I have it right there. I'll show it to you. But the interesting part of it is that I went back, and then I went to an arcade, video games, and I saw a poster. And it said Power of the Force. Ooh. And it had the new figures. And I saw that, and it caught my attention. But I said, oh, wow, there's new figures. That's great. That's cool. And then I forgot about Star Wars. And in 1993, 92, I was in a flea market in North Carolina, and I started looking at the figures. There was like a man selling the Kenner figures, and I looked at them, and I really got excited, and I said, I have those in my collection. I have those somewhere in a closet. And so I went back, I opened the closet, I got my figures out, I opened my Darth Vader case. I was like really excited. And what was my surprise, that there were 3 or 4 figures inside that case.
I was beginning to wonder if mom and dad had maybe kind of gotten rid of some of those for you.
This was my little brothers that sneaked in, played with the toys, put them back. But every time they played with them, some figure didn't come back. So I was very frustrated. And I said, my figures, and being in Mexico, back in Mexico, it was difficult to find them, and it was not like in the flea market. But after that, and I have it here, I found another clue that set me back in the path of collecting, and it was this book. Whoops.
Oh.
By Steve Sansweet. So I thought at that time that I had seen this Power of the Force figures that I mentioned, but I was not sure. I was not sure if they really existed. I said, maybe I was dreaming it. But then I opened this book, and I found out that they did exist. And I saw this photo right here, and this changed things forever. I said, I have to get them back. I have to collect again and get them back. And exactly at that time, now we're talking 94, Power of the Force figures came out. So there was a double whammy in that. It was, you can go back to a store and get the figures like you did in the past, and you had this excitement of finding them carded. And then also you had eBay starting. So I was able to start collecting my old figures. So very slowly but surely, I was able to get the full set. I'm talking about years, not and but at the beginning, I started, finding the figures, and I said, this one has no weapon. This one, I was not so interested in having a mint collection. I just wanted those figures. I wanted to have them again, as I remember them. And with Power of the Force, I started buying them to make dioramas. I wanted really to have that feeling. So that's how the collection came back to life. That's really how it started. And it started as a parallel line between new toys and vintage toys. But if I had to say what they were, it was going back to that enthusiasm of collecting. And it was Star Wars. For me at that time, it was not vintage, it was not new, it was having those Star Wars toys available.
Recapturing that childhood memories. Yes, and this is what I like the most about this series that me and Jack do, and that is what I refer to as memory lane. People going back and revisiting and remembering things that they did back then when they first got exposed to it and how they kind of got drawn into it or when they came back to it. I really enjoy that, and that was a great little story you have there. Now, in regards to all of the items you have, which appears to be action figures and vehicles and lightsabers, do you have any helmets or comics that you collect?
Not really. The main focus of the collection has evolved into the first 12.
Okay.
It's a long story why, but if I can go just directly and then we can go back if you want.
Sure.
But after a long period of time of collecting and almost having most of the new toys, which I still have, most of the new toys carded, and I have the Power of the Force, and I have the different lines, the vintage collection. I haven't stopped really collecting. I said I have to focus in something for display purposes. I really have to think what's going to be the focus of the collection. So I thought I want to have displayed the original, as much as I can, complete vintage collection of ships, of figures, but I want to focus a lot, and that would be on the first 12, because those were the ones that really started everything. So the collection is been revolving about the first 12, and what I did in the new line is put away the vintage all the new toys. They're well kept there, but really take out the new toys that focus also in the first 12. So for instance, you can see in the back here, Vader. No? So the idea is the first 12, and I've been working on the variations, starting with the front of the cards, and then some card backs. And then you can see the stormtroopers. You have Leia, you have Luke. In this side, you have a 3PO and so on. And if you go up, you can see how it goes with the first 12.
Yeah,
so
you don't need to move the camera. When we put the other footage in that other box, we'll
do that.
match
I'm sorry.
up. Yeah, exactly. No problem.
Let's do that. So it's focused on the first 12 and its variations. Also, as you were mentioning, for instance, with Vader, I have the Spanish version, I have the Argentinian version, and there's a surprise coming in a few weeks, which it's going to be one of my holy grails. I've been searching for it, and there's a very good friend of mine, and he's a really knowledgeable person and a great person. His name is Luis Villagomez. He has a shop where he sells memorabilia and he sells props, and he got me the Lili Ledy Vader. So that's gonna go right there, and that's gonna be a great piece.
Wow, well, that sounds really, really neat. Now, I just, for a little clarification, repronounce or re-say Lila Lili? I didn't understand what it was.
It's Lili Ledy.
Lily Letty.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, that's fine.
Lily Letty.
And
So-
and Lily Letty is a reference to what? A manufacturer or
Manufacturer. He had the license.
Okay.
It's like Kenner.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
And where was he from?
Mexico.
Okay. Okay.
So
okay,
like
okay.
in Argentina, in Spain, it was in Argentina, it was Top Toys.
Okay, so well, that was going to be my next question. So,
Yeah.
what defines where not only where it came from, but obviously there was a maker or manufacturer
Exactly.
in that area.
Right.
And they're very interesting because, for instance, the Argentinian version, talking about the first 12, if you turn the card back, it's a Vader, and it has the new picture of Vader in the card, and it's a Jedi card. But if you turn it around, it has a picture of the first 12. Drone picture of the first 12. So that's fantastic, for instance. That's variations. The Argentinian version doesn't have holes in the feet. So that's interesting as well. The Spanish version from that was a very nicely made toy. It was very kosher regarding the Kenner standards, and as was Palitoy from England. But in this case, Argentinian and Mexico made very peculiar toys. So that's part of the fun of collecting this. So part of the idea is going with the first 12, and as you can see, here's the first 12 on the set, and there's some small Lego first 12s. And so from the vintage collection, if you could see there, but we'll show that later, I have from the Black Series, I have the first 12, like shown, and so on and so forth. So the idea is that go from the first 12 from the early bird, which I have, the early bird and the early bird set that was sent after you sent the coupon, and which, sorry for the parenthesis, but this is really cool. My early bird, the day the stamp is placed on the box, is May 25th, 78. So it was exactly 1 year after the movie was released.
That's awesome.
That this package arrived.
So there was a picture you sent to me, and it had an item in there, and it had what appeared to be the box with the wrapping around it. Is that what it is you're referring to?
Yes. There's well, it's a relatively known fandom story that Kenner didn't have the toys on time in 77 to be released for Christmas, so they had to do something about it, and they came out with an envelope with a board, and this was called, and a coupon with a promise that they will send you the first figures, which was 4 figures, which is right there, which is Luke, R2, Chewbacca, and Leia. So you will receive a little tray, a plastic tray with the figures, some pins, and in a box, and that's what you would receive. The ones I have arrived or were sent. The stamp was exactly 1 year after the movie was released, and so that's quite interesting. But also, what's interesting is I have the coupon. I have the early bird, and I have one that it's opened. And it actually has the coupon, and the coupon is filled out with a date 77, and I always wondered why this person never sent the coupon,
right? And
it's complete, and the coupon is there, so that's very exciting too. It's like looking at the coupon, and it's like going back in the past. I lost my track.
Well, my answer to why he never sent the coupon in is, my feeling is he had multiple ones, and he sent a few in, and then it was like, hey, I want to send in another, but just for whatever reason couldn't get the postage, couldn't get the shipping and handling. You had to send a check in with it, and maybe his family was like, we've sent in enough, you don't need to send in another. So he had one ready to go, but it never got sent in.
Yeah, that's a good explanation, and it's fantastic that this was kept in a closet somewhere, no,
Crazy.
for so many
Right.
years.
Well,
I
I
never
keep
sent
pointing over to Jack here. He's the guy that bought all that stuff back then and had the ability to go put it in a box in the garage and save it for years later. And the
That's awesome.
temptation to not go open it up and play with it must not have been that strong.
I have a few of the GI Joe tags where you could
Yeah.
send those in to get free action figures, and my mom was like, Jack, you've already sent in too many. I'm not going to do any
Ah,
more. And I still have it. It's like filled out, and it's just like, damn.
thanks to guys like you, I have my early bird with my filled out coupon,
Exactly.
So
which
I
I think
have
is
a
awesome.
few questions that I'd like to ask, but
Sure.
there's a new one that I want to ask. And with regards to the Argentinian version or the Spanish version or the Mexican version or the US version or the Hong Kong version, you purchase the license as a manufacturer, but how does the product vary? In other words, if we're referring to, I'm just going to grab somebody here, this action figure, I make it here in the US and I sell it to, I license a guy in Mexico or wherever to make it. Do I also send him the molds or does he make the molds? And ultimately, how does that vary in the figure?
Let me show you something. I have it right here, so it's not a problem. So you think about the 12-inch Vader, right? The Kenner version. So just put this back. So if you picture in your mind, this is the Lililedi version. So as you can see, it's very different. So this is a Ken, a Barbie, Ken figure. So he's very slim. He would be a lot shorter than the
US.
American version.
Right.
And also, as you can see, this is
Silver.
mostly just decals, that go in the suit.
It's not painted.
But the interesting thing is it's modeled after the small figure. If you see the head,
I can see it, but I don't know what I'm looking for.
so this is so the example goes that if you really look at it, it's quite, I'll make it stay. It's very different. And when you go to the smaller figures, especially in the last runs, they became better. They became a lot closer to the Kenner. But still there were difference. For instance, you have like the infamous red cape or red Bib Fortuna, for instance, no? And
And
so
Squid Head as well. Yeah.
exactly. They had maybe materials, so they had other things that they could use. And so they took some little liberties on that. And now they're very sought after. They're like very, very
Yeah.
So Jim, what I would recommend is, you can Google Lily Letty, Squid Head or Lily Letty Emperor's Royal Guard, and compare that to some of the Kenner ones, and you'll see some differences. I do believe that the molds would be sent to these different companies, the molds that Kenner had, and so the mold would be this very similar, but the paint applications were sometimes different, and definitely the material was sometimes different.
So this is the first time I've heard about a Spanish version or an Argentinian version. I guess I'd have to assume there was the Mexican version, the US version. We did an interview with a fellow out of China. And what was the manufacturer over there that was making something on his own? Do you remember the name of that manufacturer?
Well, he had gotten some characters from something called Stan Solo.
Yes.
Which were some like custom figures that I think somebody in the US were doing their own custom molds, custom paints. And those are also very popular, but those were never sold in the stores. All the stuff that Alfonso's talking about were stuff that you could find in stores.
Okay.
Right.
So,
I also have some Mexican bootlegs, which are interesting, mostly because they will call the name is piñateros. If you figure it's called from piñata, from the piñatas. So what they would do is they would make these Vaders and R2D2s and from plastic, very cheap plastic. And my guess, I'm pretty sure you'll see this in the pictures, is they took an original figure, they pressed it somehow, and then they made a mold and a Vader came out of that.
Right.
So these were, and they would sell them by bulk, and they would put this in the piñatas. And
Oh,
when the piñatas were broken, of course,
wow. All the little
children,
kids scrambled for all the
Right.
Star
exactly.
Wars toys. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
definitely share some of those photos. We'll put the photos in that bottom box there. But yeah, Jim, these bootleg figures, a lot of them would come from, Russia, Poland, Mexico, different places, and they don't even move. It's just like a block figure, no articulation or anything. But those are some of the best figures now, in my opinion.
Oh, wow. Wow. Wow.
No,
They're
they
very cool.
become people. They're very desirable now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It reminds me of a story out of the G.I. Joe, which the preceding episode is an interview of a guy with G.I. Joe Terry. But what came out of G.I. Joe was all those different army men and one nurse that didn't sell. And today, what is the most holy grail or most expensive G.I. Joe item? Those G.I. Joe
Exactly.
nurses.
That's crazy.
So
Exactly.
it's kind
Yes,
of
that's those are
ironic that
the weird ones.
the unwanted ones become
Exactly.
the desired ones. So as I hear what you talk about in collecting the original 12, and as I look through your collection, it seems though the bulk of it is the 3 3/4 inch scale.
Yes.
But you did mention some black series in there, so that's probably the 6 inch. You've
Exactly.
already mentioned the 12 inch in there. Anything bigger than that?
No, no, I do go, for instance, with in figures that would be the large. I do have some Legos. If you talk about helmets, I did the helmet collection of Legos, which I thought that were very cool. But I also collect, and this was outside my willingness. It happened, and as I mentioned, I have collector friends, and they're in the media and in the industry, I would say, collecting. They're more professional than I am. And I've also gone into posters a little bit of
Into
so
what?
posters.
Oh, posters.
Movie
Okay.
posters, yeah. And for instance, one that it's interesting is this guy calls me. I'm traveling, and he says he was like really, really excited, and he told me, I found the missing link between the movies and your first 12 collection. And so I was like, what do you mean? And he told me there's a poster, which I didn't know about until recently, that it was 60 movie theaters that played Star Wars: A New Hope. Well, now A New Hope. At that time, it was not A New Hope, but just to reference it, for 1 year. So they continuously played the movie for a year. So Lucas, in order to celebrate that, made a poster, and that poster was given to these 60 theaters. So there's a very small quantity of those posters, and maybe you saw it in the pictures, but I'll send it to you. And this poster is a cake with the first 12 figures around the cake. Only the Jawa is not there. I always said the Jawa, maybe it's in the cake and he'll pop out after you blow the candle, but it's the first 12 minus the Jawa. So the idea, well, he told me, well, there's also an interesting thing. This poster has never been opened. He was like really, really excited. But the interesting thing about it is that why he called it the missing link, because this poster that celebrates 1 year of the movie going on with the figures, with the Kenner first 12 figures, is this link between the movie and the action figures, that really relates. So I went into collecting this poster, and then there's another one from Empire Strikes Back that it's a movie poster, but it mentions the Kenner figures. So it's more in this idea of trying to link the movie with the toys. And so for that reason, this item is maybe one of my favorite pieces in the collection. Plus, it has an extra little meaning to it, and is the early bird that we talked about. That is exactly 1 year after the post is exactly 1 year. So is the poster, the early bird, and celebrating this connection between the toys and the movies.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Is there a particular series, story, or movie that you really enjoy as far as collecting?
Oh, well, as I mentioned, the first 12, but I would say my favorite movie and maybe my favorite toys, it's Empire Strikes Back. The Snowspeeder for me, it's incredible. The Black Series Snowspeeder, I think it's an amazing toy. I can only imagine me as a kid having that toy with the Dak figure and the Luke figure. That's such a beautiful toy. And what I like about the Black Series, and for instance, that Snowspeeder against Sideshow or Hot Toys, which they're amazing. But they're still toys, and that's something I really love about the Black Series. So going back to your question, yes, I would say my favorite movie is Empire, and my favorite toys maybe are Empire Strikes Back, but the ones that really get me are the New Hope,
The original,
and maybe the first 12 for that reason. But yes, for instance, the AT-AT toy, it's amazing, no? But it's amazing, the original AT-AT, the vintage AT-AT, and the one from the Legacy collection, I think is amazing as well, no? So as is the Millennium Falcon, no? It's the original is incredible, but when you see the Legacy collection, it's just awesome. And that's one thing, as I mentioned, I like to think about is just imagine this 8 or at that time 10-year-old kid or 9-year-old looking at these new toys like the Legacy collection, and you would have been blown away.
I mean,
they're
physically, the
toys.
size is huge, and a little kid could almost feel he could climb right inside there.
If the original vintage at that time felt, incredible when you saw the box, no, it was just amazing.
Yes,
And,
yes.
yeah.
So
yes, maybe in that regards, the Empire Strikes Back, and for another reason, Boba Fett. I remember I didn't know anything about the new movie. And then I saw Han Solo in a store. I was in Boston. For some reason, I was in Boston, and I went into a shop and I saw Han in
Carbonite?
No, in
Like Bespin?
I'm sorry, I just slipped my mind.
Winter. In the Hoth.
Hoth, yes. Right. In Hoth fatigues. And so it was amazing because it was Han Solo in the snow. So it just made me wonder what's the new movie going to be about. And when I turned the carton and I see Boba Fett, because I didn't know of the release of the previous release in Star Wars, that they started promoting it. So I didn't know about him until I saw this Han Solo figure. So all what you imagine, what is this guy gonna do in the new movie? What's his role? And of course, and then my imagination just flew of thinking about seeing Star Wars in the snow. And of course, when I saw it, the AT-ATs, and it's amazing.
Collectively, how vast or how many pieces do you think you have in your collection at this time?
I don't know. It's hard to say. So just I do have all the Power of the Force carded figures. I have the main line, not maybe all the variations, but if you think about the mainstream line, and then I have all the following Legacy and so on and so forth. So if you add those up, that's quite a bit on all the vintage collection. I have, for instance, of the original figures loose, I have them all. So that's already 100 and so, yeah, if I'm correct, yeah. And so I wouldn't know, but they could be some thousand or something.
I'm sure it would be.
That's a lot.
It's a lot, but I do have a lot of dioramas as well. So I like my armies. It's part of the fun.
Alfonso, you and I, we have a similar story. I was 4 years old the very first time I saw Star Wars in a movie theater. It came out, as you said, in May 1977. I turned 4 in July of 1977. I didn't see it until August of 1977. Part of the reason why is they only had so many prints of it. I lived in a small city up in Washington State, and even though it was out in Los Angeles and Chicago, New York, we didn't have a print at my movie theater, and it didn't come until August. Finally, we had a print, and that opening weekend, when we finally had a print, we went and saw it, and it kind of blew my mind as well, including Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which I just recently had a chance to see Devil's Tower for the first time with
Oh,
my own
really?
eyes, and it was like finally, it's like I've been waiting
Exactly.
all decades to see this, and I finally saw it. I'll send Jim a picture of our time at Devil's Tower so you can put that down there as well. But what do you think it is about Star Wars? Why did that hook you so much and make you say, even now 40, 50 years later, you're still collecting this stuff?
Uh, well, if I try to be rational about it, because there's a lot of feeling that it's difficult to explain, but it was just something completely new. I mean, when I remember that for instance, the X-wings, and for them going into the Death Star, and it just opened like a new world. I also guess the story that it's the hero's journey and makes you really want to be part of this universe, and I think it has to do maybe that it came to us in the right time. It grew with us. Our childhood, it accompanied us through our childhood, and I think that has to do with it. And of course, everything was new. The toys were new in the sense that nothing had been done in that, the scale of the starships, the all the fandom around it. That you could get the glasses and the commercials and the cereal, and but it was also a great story, and it was beautifully executed. That's why although I enjoy the new versions, the remastered versions, but also in a sense I feel a bit sad that the original versions were not released available. You didn't could get them available. Of course, there's some fan versions that they'll do it, but for me, of course, the new Battle of Yavin is amazing. You know what they did with CG, and now you can see the ships and you have close-ups to the pilots. But also, I think, and this is my son. He studies film, and he pointed this out to me, and I agree with him. Taking the original form out of or changing it is a little bit not remembering what that movie really was in that time. Or maybe it would look a little bit updated, which I think it still looks great. But it's like an homage to these people that made this happen at the time, and of course this is the new view. This is what we're looking at. But I think it's worth going back and looking at what was made at that time and why it was so amazing what they achieved. And that's mostly my first objection to these. What I wouldn't say to the new versions, to the remastered versions, mostly that the original versions are not available and maybe looked upon. I wouldn't dare to say this is the case, but maybe looked a little bit down by
the current generation or newer fans.
Yeah, maybe, or even by Lucasfilm, in the sense that say, yeah, this is the old stuff, we're going new. And
well, that could be a Disney issue too then. Prior to Star Wars, there were things such as Star Trek
right,
and 2001, and
yeah,
the visuals in there were fantastic, in particular 2001, but it all moved slowly and gracefully and such, and the Starship Enterprise would kind of come along and such. But when you got into Star Wars, it was fast, and then they had light speed that zoom, it took off like that, and so there was just a whole new visual excitement about it as well. The story was a lot of people have described it as cowboys and Indians, but it was a great story. It was a good story, a wholesome story.
also very relatable, no? Because you would see the pilots from the X-wings, and they would remind you of the U.S. Air Force pilots, no, with their orange suits, and then everything was. This has been mentioned a lot, but everything was dirty and used, and so you could put yourself in that arena.
Realistic, very,
Yeah.
very realistic.
So I think that's part of what was different as well.
And I
So
agree with what Alonso is saying as well. It's, it's nice that they have these updated versions, but at the same time, if I'm subscribing to Disney Plus or I want to buy a Blu-ray, they should allow me to buy that original cut of the film. Kind of in a way, talking about honoring the people that made that movie. There's an actor named Sebastian Shaw that played Anakin Skywalker in Return of the Jedi, and he's no longer even in the film. They replaced him with Hayden Christensen, which is cool to see Hayden show up in Return of the Jedi, but that original actor is no longer part of Star Wars. There should be an outlet to be able to purchase a nice version of those versions.
And as you say, and why shouldn't he be there? He was part of that original movie. And also you have to explain a lot of things. Is why Obi-Wan is still old, but well, yeah, that's all that fun stuff that you could get into now if you really got into the lore. But
your motivation for collecting these items seems to be an attempt to recapture some of those childhood memories, but at the same time, is it investment purposes? Is it looks? Is it enjoyment of just having them?
I try in the investment side. I try not to think too much about the investment side for one reason is you never know what's going to happen. For instance, today the glue that's holding out this figure, it might be AFA 80, but we don't know. I'm surprised that these things still hold on because they were made not for that purpose. And also, you don't know what the market's gonna do, and so it's a long time collecting. I guess that's also one thing you have to take your time. And if someday my kids get this and they like it or they can do something with it, it'll be great. It's always nice to know that any toy you have now has a larger value. But I don't know, for instance, this theory, which I don't find to be crazy, is that our generation is buying these toys right now, but maybe the next generations to come won't be so excited about Star Wars. Although Boba Fett was just sold for, I think, $1,200,000, but the fire, yes, it's amazing. But still, I don't know how my grandkids will relate to this, and I don't know which value. So my opinion is about collecting, or the way I see it is, it has to be something that really you do it for the joy, for your joy, for your, and in a sense something that won't that you'll be able to pay rent or your lease. You'll be able to not, it won't. I think that's important also. But at the end of the day, is enjoyment. Is this hobby that maybe some people play golf, or other people have a sailboat, and I collect Star Wars toys.
I see a lot of your collection back there is encapsulated or encased in acrylic
Right.
boxes of sorts. Is that just to protect them, or is that part of what's referred to as grading?
Both. I have some of them that are just which I put an acrylic on it to protect them, and some are graded. So the way I think about grading is if I'm buying from a very reliable source, I don't mind buying figures that are not graded. If I do find a figure which I'm not sure of the source, and grading is so more than the grading, I think the interesting part is knowing that the figure it's authentic, and the grading is so relative, and I can show you examples in my collection where you have a 80 plus, and then you have a 70, and I find the 70 to be in a better shape than the 80 plus. And I don't know. Yes, I'm not talking about AFA, or I think they do a great job, but that's true. It's relative. So there's some here that I love that maybe don't have a great uh, grading, some that do, but at the end of the day, that's more personal. I think that's you love your card and maybe allow it to value, but if you're not thinking to sell, mostly it's that certificate that you're buying an original item. That's what I find most valuable about graded figures.
So here's a question then, and the importance of the item collected, but I'm going to twist it just a little bit. Let's assume that you have a figure. Let's just, for conversation's sake, say it's this guy right here. Is it more important that he be in good condition where you might get a higher number, or is it more important that it's the first time you found him, that you've not been able to find him before? What drives you there?
Well, of course, there's pieces that you will find in any condition, and they're so rare that they cannot be in a great condition, and then you just know that just having it, no matter the condition, is something special. But just to put an example, we were talking about the last 17. The time I found Lando General, he didn't have a cape, he didn't have a gun, and I found it. I remember in eBay at that time it was more available, but this was particularly at a price range at that time that I could afford, and I was so excited to have him without a cape, without a gun. Of course, then you get more sophisticated and you want the mint figure and the gun and everything. But I guess, of course, you always want the mint figure, but there's also an excitement about getting things that are used, played with. I even have some figures of my original collections, the ones that were spared, and they're not in mint condition at all, but they're very special. So yes, of course, you will always like the mint figures and the mint cards, and they're very desirable and they're beautiful. But there's also something beautiful about plate toys, and they have a story. For instance, my X-Wing box is right here. It has in the back, it has the name of the boy with a marker. I think that's very valuable. I think that's fantastic. And of course, if you want to sell that X-Wing with that box, people will say no. It's. But I mean, for me, it's amazing to have that great a box in such great shape with the name of the boy. That box has been loved.
There's a word I'm trying to think of that would describe what you're saying to not individualism, but something, as you say, specific to that particular person.
A personality.
A personality. Right. So a question I also want to ask about the importance is, let's assume that you found that Lando General, no cape, no gun. What would be your feelings in regards to reproduction items? Would you hold out for an original gun and cape, or would you accept a 3D printed gun and a homemade cape that looked?
So I can talk about my own story. When I started collecting in the 90s, and I found a page that was selling repro weapons, I said, wow, yes, I can put weapons to all my figures. And because I've lost half of them. So I bought them and I put those weapons on my figures, and I was so happy about it because there's something exciting about those times. And I was not thinking about what anybody would think about my collection. I was not thinking that I wanted a mint collection. I just was so excited to have those figures again. As I started years passing and I started becoming a little bit more sophisticated, if I might say the word, and then you want to have the figure with original gun, and you go through that, and at the end of the day, my figures have original guns, and most of my repros are in my Darth Vader case in the compartment. But and I try not to mix them anymore. Of course, you have to put them in water now and see which ones how they sound, and but it's an evolution, and the truth is, I think it's very wrong if I would knowingly sell you a toy with a repro gun and I wouldn't tell you. There's a risk, and I can get that many toys or sometimes could be sold in that sense, and I think that's very bad. But there's a time, and that time is precious, where we were not thinking about if they were repros or no. We were just so excited about having our original Star Wars completed, and yeah, and I think that's the story about it. And of course, now they're making fantastic figures, new figures. I'm not collecting those figures, but I know there's some people that are making even variations, like figures that were never made. Right. And I'm not talking about the Kenner, well,
like the Stan
Hasbro
Solo that we were talking about before.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And they're doing great job. And he started doing some Jack faces and some, I mean, if I could I wrap it up? As long as you don't try to, or you don't try to pull something on someone.
Well, and the funny thing about what you're saying, as far as I'm concerned, is all this stuff that I have, I don't ever think about reselling it. So it's never really a question that comes to mind for me. And if I was trying to find the specific rifle for this fellow here, and the first time I came across it was 3D printed, I would get it because it kind of adds to the thing. Right. Down the road, if I come across an original, I might upgrade him to include that. But I'm just curious as to really what your motivation for the importance of those items was.
Right now, for instance, having my full collection of loose figures with their original weapons is something really nice, because it took me a lot of time. I might have had the figure without a gun because I bought it like that. And then at that time, still, you could get original guns at a fair price. Today, sometimes there's some guns that you better buy the figure because they're like the Leia gun or the last 17. Some of the little guns are very expensive, but at that time, as I mentioned, you could complete your figures slowly but surely. And so I could say I'm very proud to have my collection with their original guns and everything is. But there was also a time where I was as happy to have my figures with repro guns, and I was just so happy to see those again complete, because the truth was that when I was a kid, I never had complete figures. You always lost the guns. You always your lightsabers were broken. You mixed one gun with the other, or even from other lines, no? As maybe you had a Luke Skywalker with a Tron disc, and that's the truth about it. No? But today, yes, today I'm more picky, and but I remember those times that I also enjoyed, and so I cannot talk bad about repro.
Right, you want them complete, you want them vintage. Right. I understand that for sure. Let me ask you about this. In your collection, I saw especially a lot of the ships. You would have the ship loose, but you would also have the box there as well.
Right.
What's the importance as far as having the item either in the box or loose?
I have both. For instance, I have here my skiff, and you can see the box. So I got the skiff in the late 90s, still when it was not so expensive. But I always thought the art was fantastic. So I wanted the box, and I searched for it in eBay. So the box now, it's as desirable maybe as the ship itself. So I was able to get the ship because today I think the combination of the art and the toy, it's tells the whole story. There's a complete story. And the look of having that small feeling that you're in the toy shop also is very nice. I do, for instance, this one is empty. I got the box, and it's in a very nice condition. But I also have like my AT-AT has inserts, and the AT-AT is not never open, but it has an AT-AT inside and so on. So I have both. I have those combination. My A-wing, that's sealed. That's mint in box. That's one.
So a
But then you also
question.
have a loose A-wing as well. Is that correct?
I have I have to get one loose.
I see. But how about the AT-AT? That's you have
Right.
a loose AT-AT,
Yeah, I
but
have
also
a
in
loose
the
one.
box
And
AT-AT.
that's what I'm trying. I have a box X-wing with a loose X-wing and the pilot, and I tried to get the carded pilot. But for instance, with the A-wing, my idea was to get a very nice A-wing. So I found this one boxed, never opened, and it was in very good condition, and the price was not. I thought it was good price. It was okay. My idea was getting it and open it. But I was excited about having this thing of opening and looking at the cup. I never had the nerve.
Wow.
I haven't. I wouldn't. I would have to say I haven't had the nerve so far.
Let's
So
open it right now.
uh, I need some tequila. Maybe next time.
So speaking of that AT-AT, did you say that there is a boxed version where the box has not been opened and there's an original AT-AT inside that box?
Well, in the AT, it's been opened, but for instance, this one right here, I don't see the cantina. This is a closed box, and there's and this is mine. This actually was mine.
So you have two actually. You have an open cantina and also a box closed cantina.
And
Yes.
one of your videos you sent showed us that. And the question I had in my mind, and one of my questions on my notes here was there still something in that unopened box?
In some there is, and some with inserts and in mint condition. Some there isn't, like this example right here. But there's also very nice ones, like my display. I have the original mailer box. It's in the back with the address and everything. So that has another connotation, that it's knowing that.
Let me ask the question: the skiff that you pointed at on the top behind you, as well as the cantina, they're in an acrylic case. Is that just to protect it, or did you
protect them?
That box graded as well?
No, it's not graded.
Okay.
That's super. I haven't. I only have one graded vehicle, and it's not a fantastically graded. It's my Vader TIE fighter. It's a graded, I think, 65, which I look, but when I look at it, I think it's pretty nice. I don't know it's 65, but it is. So that was a good deal, and that's the only graded ship I have.
So changing the questions a little bit, and I think I may know the answer to this as well. You have been collecting since the first movie came out. And if I recall, you actually said you had one of the items before you even saw the movie.
Well, I don't have it. I recall the lightsaber, which I bought just after the movie. I wish I had it.
Standing in line.
Yes, I think the from my original toys, maybe the one that has more time is my original land speeder. I have my original land speeder, which is pretty beat up, but that's one toy that I really love for that reason.
So the question being time spent collecting, you've been collecting for 40, if not close to 50 years now.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. I had a break from maybe the 8th grade till 94, 93. But the interesting part is that if you talk about vintage, more time has passed since Power of the Force till now, that the last Kenner toys, original toys, was to Power of the Force. So it's been a long time. Plus, there's an interesting thing talking about the first 12. Power of the Force, as far as I know, is the only line that has the first 12 in the same line, because the vintage collection doesn't have the first 12 in Star Wars card, in or in the original A New Hope line. Legacy, I'm thinking about which I have there. The rest, they of course you have a Leia, you have a Luke, but you don't complete the first 12. Only Power of the Force. If I'm correct, if the vintage collection, I know in the pipeline there's Han Solo and Obi-Wan coming out in a New Hope card. If they make C-3PO, because I think it's only been released in Empire card, in A New Hope, they'll complete the first 12. So I'll be very happy, because then that's a new part of going into the first 12 collection.
That'd be cool.
Let me ask a little bit about your a manner of displaying your product. So is it's an entire room devoted to your Star Wars collection.
Right.
That being the case, I'm assuming there's 4 walls.
There's no, there's actually 3 walls, and the one in front of me is a window,
Okay.
which I mostly that window is kept with shutters.
Yes. Tell me about the cabinetry. You had someone come in and this is custom made for you, or how did it get in there, and how did you come about the idea?
Well, one thing I have to say is this area, it's an area we live a lot. My 3 boys now we're home alone now. They left for college, but my wife and I, and when the kids are here, this area, it's a TV room, and we also use it sometimes to have breakfast, and so we actually live a lot in this space. So it was important that the collection also was a livable space and where we could enjoy it. So my father-in-law is an architect, and so he's been kind enough to get into my hype, and I talked to him a lot, and we always discussed about how, displaying the collection in a different manner. And finally, last year, well, the year before that, we started planning, and so I had to take all my toys down, and it was good that my kids were in college, because then I could put all my toys in their rooms. I just told them, just don't return until Christmas. and then he designed all this all the cabinetry for me, and so it took almost a year to complete. We had a person that it's a fantastic carpenter, but it was slow and surely. And then all the lights are I bought the strips of Hue by GE, and they're fantastic because you just need to plug them in. Philips, I mean, Philips Hue. You just plug them in, and they have tape, so you can just put them behind, or they're
These are LED type lights.
LED types, and actually you could change them of color. You could go red, and you can have the dark side, just take the collection.
And so it appears as though all of these items are shelved or sitting on shelves, glass shelves, as opposed to pinned to the wall or suspended and hanging from the ceiling.
That's right. That was part of the deal. I used to have them pinned to the wall and hanging, but now that everything is shelved, yes, they are. And especially for the glass, I think for all the dust, and so in Mexico, most of the houses are not sealed. We have great weather. It's not very hot. We're very high, almost like higher than Colorado, actually, than Denver, quite high. We're surrounded by mountains, and so our weather, since we're south, our weather is very mild. So our houses are not really sealed. So we do get the downside is we get some dust. We do get dust, so that helps a lot in order to protect the collection, and also because, as I mentioned, we have some windows there. It also helps with the light and protecting the collection.
The word dust comes up often
Exactly.
with a lot of collectors, although it doesn't ever come up with me. So
exactly. Well, part of the fun is taking them down, cleaning them, and put them back up.
And we've had a number of people that they just look forward to going in and taking everything down and cleaning it and thinking about it and playing with it, and then maybe put it back up there. How is your display arranged? I mean, is there any logic to what sits on what shelf or any particular order?
Yes, it does. So on my right side, I have all this area. The first part is vintage, and this area is mostly devoted to the first 12. So, for instance, to my right, there's a case where you would have, as you do in the back, all the original figures, blues, but the first 12 are AFA cased. The reason is not so much because of the grading, it's because I wanted them to stand out against the rest. So you have the first 12 in their acrylic cases, and the rest don't. So it's the first 12 in context with the rest of the figures. Then in that side, I also have the first 12 from the Black Series, for instance. And so everything in this area has to do with first 12, mostly vintage, but also referencing to the new toys. So for instance, the early bird. The early bird, I have my original early bird. Then I have my original package, the early bird package that you received. But then I have interactions. For instance, I have the one that was released with Power of the Force. I have the one that was released with Gentle Giant, which is one of my favorite toys. It's amazing. It's the early bird with a tray and big figures. They also did it with the Black Series. So I try to go like all these interactions. And also you would find the Vader, the Lily Lady Vader, the Lily Lady Leia. So it's everything that goes related with the first 12. Then it starts changing to the ships from general collection. There's some Jedi and so on in the middle, but so I try to go vintage, but mostly focus on the first 12. And then the second part of the room is mostly the new toys. So it'll be also based on the first 12, and then they start diluting into some of my favorite toys, and like the Yavin 4 first scene where you have like the troopers and that I have there.
Right.
And I also have the vintage collection, all that was released for A New Hope, and for Jedi, and for Empire, but that mostly the 3 original movies. So that would be mostly how it's curated.
Is this room full, or
It
do
is.
you have the ability to expand?
I think most collectors always find room. You move these things around and then find, oh, I don't know how I did this. I do have everything is cataloged, everything is checked, but I do have a lot of stuff in cases, in big cases. And my plan or my idea, what I would hope is that someday I could maybe have another space or so where I could put those toys in, because it'll be great to have like this story of the different lines, for instance, how they evolved, or this story of how you went from this original Kenner look to the vintage collection look, which is amazing, all this story. But yes, I think that happens to all of the collectors space, and of course you always my idea is trying to focus more, like as I mentioned, the first 12, and maybe if the first 12 collection starts growing and growing, it'll be moving away other part of the collection, which but yes, not everything is displayed.
With the first 12 Black Series, are those on a card or are they boxed?
Both. I have them in the card, which it's cool because they can relate to this ones here.
Right.
But I also have them loose because I have them in the first 12 display, this one, with the first 12 on the.
Oh, so you have the big answer.
Yeah.
Right.
So I love how they relate. Like you have this size and they relate to the large size, and then they relate on the top. I have the Funkos, and then so it's amazing how you go with the first 12 interactions, how they've been developed through all the years, and
Legacy collection, Saga
Legacy
collection,
collection,
Anniversary
exactly.
collection, the
Exactly.
Power of the Jedi collection.
Exactly. So I have the look from all these different releases, and from the first 12, and it's quite interesting. You can be staring at them quite a long time and go back to your original look, and
you look at like an original, like a farm boy Luke from the vintage 1977, 1978, but then also the 1995, the 2002, the 2006, the 2008. Yeah, it's very interesting.
And it's a story because you see the 90s, where you have all these build up figures,
Right.
and how now the vintage collection, they're doing it very accurate, and so I think it tells the story about not only Star Wars but also toy manufacturing, and that's, I think, very nice. But at the end of the day, my favorite part is standing in the middle of the room and thinking about what would my 8-year-old me think about this, no? That's what blows you up. That was fantastic. Yes,
I've always liked the Legacy collection, that 2008, 2009 Legacy collection. You talked about the Millennium Falcon from that collection, quite a few of the other ships, even the Rancor, I think, from that collection. Very cool Legacy collection. Yes.
Yeah, they were pushing boundaries there,
It was so cool.
Yeah. And I think now those size toys, they've been going to the HasLab, no? But at that time they were releasing them in toy shops, no? And I think that's amazing, no?
Do you have the HasLab sail barge? Was that part
I
of your
do.
collection?
I do have the sail barge, and it was tough because you could not get it in Mexico. They would not ship to Mexico. So I was not able to get it when it was released. So I do had to search for a long time for one. Finally, I was able to get one at a price that I felt comfortable not too long ago. And I had to ship it to one of my brothers who lives in the state. And then getting it to Mexico was an ordeal. It was fun. But it's one of my favorite toys. I mean, it's amazing, and
it's huge, if I recall right, like 60 inches long.
Amazing. Yes, it's amazing.
Do you have all the figures that go with it?
Yeah, I do. And part of the fun was because I had the figures, the loose figures, and also as well as carded, but I had them loose. And the idea was, what do I, you never like knew where to put them, no? And when you have the barge, it's amazing because you can really and then this is I hope it's a fun story, but I think it is. I always wondered what happened to B Fortuna when the barge exploded, mainly because when they show it in the new Disney Book of Boba Fett, no, he appears at the beginning. So you say, well, he survived somehow, no? And I think there's lore also in comics where he survives. So, but when I was placing him in the barge, I started researching what happened to him, and there's all this lore that talks about B Fortuna. He was going to turn against Jabba, no? He was like planning on this. So he actually had a plan to escape if things went wrong. So that's why if I'm right, that's one of the reasons why he got away. So in my barge, he's like
towards the exit.
Yeah, exiting.
That's funny.
So that's part of the fun, no? That you have all these little stories that you can put in your starships and in your dioramas, and
quite a few of the characters with the lore, they ended up surviving the barge explosion.
Exactly. Like Boba Fett, no? For instance.
Well, Boba Fett, he was off the barge before, but specifically like Yak Face, I think he was like off the barge before it exploded.
It exploded, no? And that's part of the fun. There's great lore and there's great things done afterwards. Others I'm not too fond, but I mean that's part of it. People.
At least there's something that's still coming out.
Exactly.
That says Star Wars.
And that's, I guess, what it's different about Star Wars, no? That new generations, for instance, in my collection, just to mention it, there's a part devoted to the episode 1, 2, and 3. And so I have those toys as well. And that the reason of that is because I have the first 3 movies that 4, 5, and 6 that I really enjoy, and that was my movies. But my kids' movies were 1, 2, and 3. So I have those toys because it reminds me about them. Also, they like it when they come and see those movies. But I have to say one more thing. They got me very excited again when you were thinking about episode 1 coming out and the toys being released, and it was that feeling. It got you back. Of course, then maybe we got a little bit disappointed, maybe don't, but that's part of the fun. But at the end of the day, they tell a story of this fandom and this.
I've always been a prequel defender, even in the early 2000s, and growing up with them. Not, I was already of age, but just hearing other people tell stories of their disappointment of the prequel trilogy. There's so much lore that happens in it, and there's some great characters that are developed in there as well, that you can't dismiss it completely. The sequel trilogy, I can understand having some animosity to that and just saying, I'm done with it. But the prequel trilogy, there's still a lot of lore there.
And I would say especially when you put the Clone Wars in there.
Yes, that definitely helps it for sure.
Yes, I think it really puts that together, and there's great things about the first three. Well, the 1, 2, 3. Sometimes you get confused with the first three and
right.
But
The one,
episodes
2, 3.
1, 2, and 3. There's
right.
I mean, the world they create is amazing.
I mean, even just the characters of Qui-Gon Jinn and Darth Maul, I think, are great, additions to the Star Wars lore. But even the pod racing and seeing Anakin and that kind of connection from a boy to a teenager to a man, and that change, I think, is very good. Even seeing the stormtroopers, or at least the clone troopers, fighting on the Jedi side, I mean, that blew me away. I was like, wait, the stormtroopers are with the Jedi? That's
how
great.
they evolve, no? It's also really nice how also how they evolve in their suits and no, there's a lot to it.
The clones are definitely, that's a collection point for me, going back to some of those 2003, 2005, 2006 figures, all the different clones. I really wanted to collect all of those during that time.
Oh, there's amazing. And they've come out recently with fantastic figures in that regards. And the vehicles are also amazing. For instance, the Naboo fighter.
The silver.
Beautiful ship. You know?
Right.
You have one, and you also have
he's got like the transport back there
transporter.
As well.
That's a beautiful ship as well. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
my newest.
That's the other
Rebel
transport.
That's a very nice
the vintage.
Yeah, that's so cool.
That's cool. Rebel transport.
Yeah, those
very nice.
Let me ask a few specific questions about your collection. I've got notes here. Starting with, you've got a cantina that's laid out on a shelf. Is that is it directly behind you?
Well, I have this one, but I also have a vintage collection one.
Okay.
Which and I'm waiting for the HasLab one. Which
you also had
guilty as charged.
You also had an Ewok play set, if I recall right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There's also a Han Solo carbonite scene with Boba Fett in it.
Yes, there's several. I have one from the vintage collection, and I have also my original Slave one, vintage, and there I have also that set up with the vintage figures. And as you can see, I like to play with my toys still.
And then a couple of items I noticed that vary from the figures. One was a poster that said "It's back," and I'm not sure what that was a reference to.
Maybe you mean a large poster? Or...
Yeah, I think it was a large poster. It said "It's back," and it seemed to be a poster of something.
Maybe it's the one that I was mentioning, which was the 1 year anniversary.
It might be the 1 year.
Okay.
Going back to that poster, the 1 year anniversary poster, I remember the first time I saw that in a movie theater. And it has the cake. It's like got a tiered cake.
Oh wow!
A couple, 3
you
levels.
Saw it actually at the theater,
and I was like, wow! I can't believe they put the action figures in a movie poster like that. It's always been one of my favorite posters.
I was told by the person who actually got me the poster, Luis, that the original poster was drawn by Ralph McGuire, and he showed me the art. Yeah. But for some reason they decided to go with the figures, which I love now. It's fantastic.
It's an awesome poster. I'm a little, I don't know for sure if it was only went to the theaters that had the played it for 1 year straight. Because at my local theater, which again we didn't get it until like kind of end of July, I do remember in May they kind of had that poster as well. And so it wouldn't have been the whole year, but it was just almost like a chance to re-release the movie, but it had been playing the whole time.
Maybe if you were playing it during May,
then you got the poster,
no?
Yeah, okay, maybe something like that. Right.
That's fantastic. Well, that's great to hear you say that you actually.
I remember it in the theater, I've talked to my nephew about it, and he knows that's my favorite Star Wars poster. The one with the cake, 1 year anniversary, and then I guess it's only 11 action figures. I don't remember that the Ewok isn't on there, or not the Ewok, the Jawa isn't on there.
The Jawa is not there, No, and for sure it's one of my holy grails. And I also have another poster which I love. It's not actually a poster. It's actually I had it here in the book, and it's this piece that it's a Is this piece right here? You can see it in the book. And what's interesting about it,
Yeah.
it's that that is the proof sheet of the Millennium Falcon.
Right.
And I have it right there. And the interesting thing is that it says Revenge of the Jedi.
Oh, okay.
So this proof card of these proof sheets were actually had to be discarded, and they had already invested all this money because it was going to Revenge of the Jedi. It was
done. Yeah, right.
So having that piece of history for me, it's also, I would say that's also one of my favorite pieces.
Another Grail type piece. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I also remember the Revenge of the Jedi posters that were out originally in the movie theaters. And then that got swapped, maybe 3 or 4 months before the movie actually came out to the blue one. It was like a red poster with Darth Vader, Revenge of the Jedi originally.
No, that's amazing. When you see those early prototypes, that I imagine Kenner when they had all this run and ready to release, and they were called and said, we're going back.
It was a big deal. It really was.
Yes, yeah. I understand it was quite a bit of money, but of course they knew that they would get that back.
You had a dome-shaped play set that I think is the Death Star.
Is a Death Star, and it's the Palitoy carton.
Okay.
But that set has double value for me in my collection. That was also by the person I mentioned, Luis Villagomez from Tesoros de la Historia. That's his shop. He called me and said, I have something very special because, of course, it's the Death Star. But as you know, or maybe some people know, is if you turn it, in the bottom is the first 12 figures, promoting the first 12 figures. So it's a reference both to a wonderful toy, which is, I think, that Death Star, but also it has this connection with the first 12. So that's also very, very special. So that's also one of the toys. That one, and I also have the first 12 store display. That's also one of the interesting pieces, I think, that go in that regard.
There was a Princess Leia, and it was, I assume, written in Spanish, La Guerra Raid.
La Guerra de las Galaxias, which is Star Wars.
Right off your tongue.
It has that La Guerra de las
Galaxias. There was one a video you sent me. It's a 4-piece cantina band.
Yeah.
Individual, and you push the button in it. They
play. Yes, I'm pretty. If I'm correct, that's still Power of the Force. But yes, they released them with the bases, and you would press the button, and not only that, the lights would come up, and so that's a not a vintage. They're vintage now, but I mean, what's considered vintage. But this, I think, is one of my favorite pieces that actually you press and you can hear the cantina tune.
Did I also see a Kenner catalog?
Yes, that's a sales that's the seller, the seller's catalog, and that's the catalog that the salesman from Kenner will take and show the toy shops who are doing the shows to sell the toys, and I think it has two interesting parts. One of them is that, of course, you see the Star Wars toys, which are amazing, and you love. That's the main reason. But you can also see the other toys that Kenner had, and if I'm correct, it still has the is $1 million man, 1 million, if I'm correct, because in
$1 million man.
Exactly. So you can see that. You can see. All the Kenner dolls and all the other things they had. So what's nice about it is
$6 million man.
$6 million man. That's right. Yeah. The thing in Mexico, it was called the nuclear man, el hombre nuclear, the nuclear man. So what's nice about the catalog is you can actually relate to the other toys that were available at the time, and I think that's pretty cool. But this one, if I'm correct, is the 79 catalog. I would like to see the one previous to that, but I haven't I haven't gotten one because those, if you talk about the first 12, that would be the one to have. But this one I love. So
There's
that's
a there's a, you know, like you've heard of Comic Con. They're
yeah.
going to do a Kenner Con. It's the first annual Kenner Con.
Oh
It's going to
wow.
be in Cincinnati sometime in 2026. And
Oh
I just
wow.
wonder if that would be an opportunity there to not only maybe see, but also purchase one of
Right.
those original catalogs. They're going to have a lot of the Kenner employees that are now obviously in their 70s, some pushing 80s at this con. I plan to go to that.
We'll
So
meet
look.
there for sure then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll do
we'll make a
that.
date
Oh,
for
for
sure.
sure.
That's awesome.
I did. That's fantastic. And in
I'll,
Cincinnati, of course, of all
in
places.
Cincinnati. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Fantastic.
You know, let me ask you, living in Mexico City, where are you able to purchase your action figures? If you want like a vintage collection action figure or something, is it all online or are there stores that you can go to and purchase?
There's both. You can go and purchase new figures. As in the States, there's a lot of you call them scalpers, no? They go and buy things and then they would put them online. There's several platforms and that's. But you can also, if you're take you go early, you can get some stuff the same as in the US. Uh, the vintage things, there's different people that you know, and you start getting connections. But also, I have I have one of my brothers that lives in the States, so I can buy on eBay some things and ship to him. And there's also other great people there that on conventions. There's also conventions in Mexico, and there's shows. But the new items, you do get them in stores. Uh, of course, not the specials. Like, of course, HasLab would be something that is not available in Mexico.
Now, when you say
They
HasLab,
don't ship internationally.
Not to Mexico. I know they do to Canada, and I believe to other in Europe, if I'm correct, the UK,
okay.
but not to Mexico.
So the HasLab Jawa, or I'm sorry, Java Palace that you bought,
Uh-huh.
that's going to be shipped to the brother, then he'll ship it to you?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Well, it'll be shipped to him, and then we'll see what we do.
Right.
How
Is
we
he a
can.
collector as well?
No, no,
Okay.
he's not. He was the soccer player. He liked sports, and he liked which was not bad because my parents returned from a trip in '78, and they brought us back a TIE fighter, a TIE X-wing, and some of the figures. I remember a Luke Farm Boy, a Vader, a Stormtrooper. There was a Chewbacca, and so on. And I mean, so he got his toys, I got mine. I got the X-wing, he got the TIE fighter, and but you know, he played with them like a little while, and then he went outside and played with his soccer ball. So at the end of the day, I got the
That's
I was
cool.
able to get the full collection.
Who in your family is the collector?
Well, my grandfather, he liked collecting things as well. He had trains. He had quite a large collection of trains uh, and small model toys. Also, a lot of teen toys, which there are pretty nice ones still there. Yeah, which my father has. And my father also collects small cars. He has like so there's a
It's in the
history there
genes.
that we like to, and it's also I have some compulsive nature in myself.
Which brings me to my next question, and that is, are you obsessive about getting something? Are you compulsive, have to get it right away? Do you have a budget, or is that budget under control? Is that budget out of control?
I do try to have a budget, but there's always and I'm going back to Luis if he says that he going, I get so excited when I receive a message with him and I start just getting nervous because I know he got something great. But sometimes you do have to pass. Sometimes there's items that maybe you know that it's a one in a lifetime chance, and if you are available to get them, and you're not being, I would say, irresponsible, then it's, maybe you can consider that. but generally speaking, you know, I guess you have to be responsible in what you buy, and that's setting a limit to what you do, and and I also think part of the fun is pacing and having that illusion in that someday you'll be able to get this figure that you really want, or no, or then you'll never have it, nothing happens. Uh, but I guess, but yes, of course, there's times where you get excited, and for instance, just an example, I one of other things I wanted to do is have the ships. I had the ships, the vintage ships, and I thought it would be really cool to have the carded pilot next to each ship. So I got my X-wing, and I was able to get the carded look, and but
E-wing,
then you had the B-wing,
the
but then you had
A-wing.
your TIE fighter, and it looked quite alone. And then you start getting this like urge to, and then you say, well, I'm just gonna serve a little bit and see.
Yeah.
But then you find this great deal, and you say, no, how can I not buy this? It'll be.
Who do you put next to the Y-wing?
That's a great question. I don't want to put General Akbar,
Right,
but
that he's
it should be General
in the picture. It's
Akbar.
him. Yeah, right. Yeah.
It has to be General Akbar.
Right.
I have the X-wing. I have the the TIE
TIE
fighter.
fighter. Yeah.
I have the B-wing, and I have the twin pod car pilot.
Oh, okay.
Which is that's one of my favorite figures. So that's a nice combination.
Right.
One of the I'm looking forward, for instance, the ATAT, to have the ATAT driver with the ATAT commander.
Right.
I think that would be a beautiful.
I think that would be cool. And now, would they have to be Empire Strikes Back carded,
Yes.
or would they have to be Empire?
Yes. I don't mind so much which back. It could be different, but it would have to be the Empire Strikes Back card. Yeah. Right. But I mean, it could be in 2-3 years. I mean,
they're out there. Yeah.
I'm not. With this beautiful collection you have and fantastically displayed, who sees this collection?
Well, my wife every day to start it, and we also you know, leave the room a lot, as I mentioned, so that's nice. It's so, I mean, when you invite people home, you know, to your house, this room is not like a basement, or it's actually very accessible. So it's cool. I think there's two type of people. Other ones like us that are excited about toys, collect, and when you invite friends that are in that spirit, it's really cool because really can talk about it. But also when there's people that are not into this and they're our age, and they come in this room and look at the toys, you know, when you see their faces and they just reminiscence and go back, it's amazing. So for instance, if you have guests to the house and they pick and they say, you know, what do you have in there? And they go in and they see all the toys. So for instance, people that you invite to the house for lunch, dinner, or my brothers, when they come here, they always, you know, it's as you can imagine, it's always something you talk about, and nerds won, geeks won. So at the end of the day, now it's cool to have all these toys, and people are very excited about reminiscence, and I think at the end of the day, most of our generation are Star Wars lovers at heart, and now people can talk openly about it. So it's a great conversation piece, and something I love to talk about. And one of the greatest things is, like, for example, today that we have the chance to talk, it's like inviting your friends to play. It's you play with them and you don't play alone. It's always more fun.
Yeah, somewhat. I remember having some Empire figures, and I brought them over to a friend's house, and they started smashing them together, and I was like, all right, playtime's over. I took all my figures. They played with them differently than I played, you know? It was
no, exactly. No, that's you're right. No,
right. Do you have like a favorite item, or like a showcase item? If somebody new comes over and they want to see the display, is there an item that you say, hey, you have to see this one? And what is that?
Yes. Well, today, which was recent, is maybe the poster we discussed about, the 1 year poster that would be in relation to the early bird that they relate in that regard. I would say that could be maybe one of the pieces that I would mostly like to show and talk about. But yes, maybe that would be today my go-to items. Of course, most people, of course, you have the carded figures here, the first 12, but I would have to say most people get drawn to the loose figures, to the whole collection of the loose figures. That's what really sometimes catches the eye of people that are not into collecting.
Accessibility might be the reason.
Yeah.
In the case, you tend to, okay, it's case, I better stand back. But
Maybe,
if it's a loose figure, it's like reach in and grab it.
and maybe it's the way they remember them more, like being loose. Of course, then they go, "Oh, you have them carded or whatever." No, but and I think that's pretty cool. Also, people start saying, "I used to have that," no, or "I used to have that." So sometimes that also draws you to another item that you were not thinking at that time, but maybe something catches the attention of someone, and that would put the conversation in that piece. There's some pieces like I have a vinyl Puchawa that could be also something nice to talk about, or a look with a telescoping saber, and so those would be more for the curious type people that you say, and you tell more of the stories. And there's also these items that people relate more to, because people that are not into collecting wouldn't be drawn to a look with telescoping saber. It's for them, it's not. But maybe it's the Lily Levy Darth Vader. I used to have that, and that really blows their mind.
Interesting.
That's interesting.
And you said that it was Star Wars. You saw Star Wars in like December of 77 is when you saw
No,
it?
78. No, it was released in Mexico in December 77, but I didn't see it until 78, maybe February. I can't recall exactly, but it should have been early 78.
Got it. And had you heard about it prior to seeing it?
The first time I remember hearing about it was because one of my classmates had, and this is a little blurry, he had trading cards, and he went to the States. He returned, and he had these trading cards of a movie that he loved, and I remember looking at these cards, and for some reason I remember looking at C-3PO and R2, and this is going to sound very strange, but I saw some of the pictures of the ships, and this is very blurry, and but if I'm correct, that's the first. And because I would have to think when were the top cards released, but I think they were released maybe in early 78. Because then, if not, my story is not true. Then I'm just imagining it. But that's mostly
But
what
you remember the cards even before the movie.
Before I saw the movie.
Right.
It had been released in the States, because it had been released in the States since May
77.
Yes. So it was more than 8 months.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And but you had heard that it was a good movie. Is that correct?
Not really a good movie. But everybody was excited about it more than being good. I think everybody talked about it, and everyone was excited, and then the T-shirts started showing, and different paraphernalia. But to be honest, and this was very nice, I didn't get to see much until I saw it in the theaters.
Interesting. But you also said that Empire Strikes Back is your favorite of all of them.
Yes.
What do you remember about that experience, seeing Empire Strikes Back for the first time?
Of course, I was older, and that played, but I think, well, of course, I remember Vader going out and talking if Vader really was Luke's father, or he was tricking him just to get him to turn. But for sure, the thing that really caught my mind was the Battle of Hoth. That was incredible. I remember the movie theater had a huge balloon that said Empire Strikes Back. and as it happened in with A New Hope, we went twice to try to get tickets, and it was impossible. So we had to wait until we one of the mother of one of my friends said, "Okay, I'm gonna go early and try to get tickets." She was so kind enough to do that, and then we we went to the theater, and I knew there was something going to happen in the snow, and maybe that's nice about living in Mexico. You didn't get as much information. So when you watched the movie, you were surprised in a lot of matter. I had seen the handcuffed figure, but uh, I remember just that scene, that opening scene with the probe droid hitting the snow, and for me the costumes and the snow costumes were fantastic. No, and that movie blew me away. The snow speeders. Uh, and also I think the story it started making sense, not from the first movie. Now you got a story. It was not just the arc of Luke, but now you got a story, a complex story, and at the time I didn't think about it that way, but I think you feel it. You start thinking there's more to these movies.
Right.
I guess that, of course, A New Hope will always be, I wouldn't say my favorite, but maybe the one I love the most.
It's what started it all. So you
Exactly.
kind of have to give your respect to it. But the movie that really affected you, that really, again, kind of hooked you into the Star Wars
was
theme,
Empire.
was Empire Strikes Back. Yeah.
And sometimes people, I think there's like the people that like Jedi, the ones that don't so much. I mean, the speeder bike chase is amazing. No, I think when I saw that for the first time, I was blown up, and it's fantastic. But I think Empire connects everything. That's really what makes it tick, and plus visually is fantastic.
We've talked about it a few times in other episodes here that, I was 6 years old when Empire Strikes Back came out, a late six. It came out in May. My birthday was in July, so I was almost 7. But we did see it opening night. And I remember my parents taking me to see it opening night and saying, look, you have to be quiet in the movie theater. You can't, yell and talk and whatever. And the very first time you see like Luke Skywalker on a tauntaun going across, the entire theater was like clapping and applauding. I was like, what? Everyone's being loud. I thought we were supposed to be quiet. We get to the end of the movie and Han Solo's in carbonite and they take off and the movie just ends. And I remember looking at my mom like, what just happened? She goes, it's a cliffhanger. And I looked back at her, I said, what's a cliffhanger?
That's amazing. So it introduces so many things, no? And or when you see the time the AT-AT steps on the everything shakes in the screen, and that's the thing. You felt them. And that thing, it's a little bit what I miss a little bit in the new thing, which the Mandalorian, and I thought there was great things about it, but that feeling, that surprise, that it was not only the story, is when you looked at that, it was, wow, I've never seen that.
Never seen before, right? Bigger than life type of things.
But being fair, I think nowadays movie makers, they have a tougher job, because surprising us, I think it's more difficult. I would think that, of course, there's very talented people, but now you've seen, I mean, if you saw an AT-AT today, they could put it in any of the new TV shows, and you could put any big transport, or at that time, this was amazing, no?
Yeah, you're right. It really was kind of the timing. It just all came together in the music,
everything come together.
And everything. Yeah, it really was something.
Me, the connectivity of the first 3 plus the prequels was, every time I went there, the feeling that I felt, and when the first scene started opening up, was, oh, here's my old friends. I was familiar with them. I knew who they were. It was like seeing family again. And of course, as soon as that Star Wars theme music starts, you just get this big lump in your throat. And it was such a good, happy feeling.
Yeah, no, and I think that's maybe what was disappointed about episode is 6, 7, no? That we were looking forward to see them again together, no? I think, and we never got to see Luke, Han, and Leia, and Chewbacca, and R2 back. They never met on screen, and I think that was very disappointing. I think to start up, I mean, I don't. People like it. People don't. That's. But I think what you just mentioned is part of it. That you got to see these characters again together, and I think it's a little bit sad that this was this moment in time that was lost. It was the last chance, and now that
It's
won't be
gone.
possible. No, it's
Yeah, it's
gone.
gone.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
I
gone.
also remember the tail end of Rogue One brought you back to the very beginning of Episode 4, New Hope, where the Empire was coming up upon that ship, and even though it was kind of done CGI, you got to
Yeah,
see
that's good.
Princess Leia. And it had been many years since you saw her, and here she was again. Oh,
Rogue One for me, it's it got to me a little bit of old feeling of about Star Wars. I think I know there's, of course, as we mentioned, there's people that love it, but for me, Rogue One of the new movies is one of my favorites. And I like how, as you mentioned, how it connects A New Hope, and when Vader is staring at the Tantive and it's going away, and you get to see Vader. Why is he such a mean character? No, you really get to see him in this.
I think
I got
Alfonso
really
was looking for
excited.
badass.
It's a
Yes.
badass, exactly. He's a real badass. I really got excited in that scene, and of course, and that's where I don't, get too much into if the deep fake was good, but who cares? I mean, I got really excited when Leia was there, and that connection with
It's nice to see the connection. Yeah,
it's
right.
nice to see that connection, and I also like to see the other squadrons, the X-wing squadrons. Like, this. I don't recall the name. I used to know this, but the leader of the Blue Squadron that had like a British sort of mustache, and they really made pretty cool characters.
Right.
So for me, Rogue One, I think that one was pretty good. I like that movie pretty
so
much.
who is your favorite character?
Well, it's hard to say. When I was a boy, Luke. I just got my wife was here. She said, "Baby Yoda."
Sorry, wrong series, sweetheart.
Yeah,
It could
and
be.
yes, exactly. But well, when I was young, Luke, and I would still say he still is, but yeah, but Vader, and I have to say with the prequels and with the Clone Wars, he takes a new relevance for sure, and he's you understand at the end of the day he's the one that connects
Right.
the story
It's really
and
Anakin's story.
exactly. So Darth Vader in that regards, but when I was young, a kid, I always liked to have Luke, especially in the X-wing X-wing Luke. That was my uh, because I love the X-wings and I love him as a pilot, and I always missed that in the original line they never really made more pilots, like more X-wing pilots. I would have loved to see Biggs and all that sort cohort of pilots, but I love pilots. I liked the big GI Joes. Also, I never had many, but I had maybe a couple, and I loved always the pilot versions of those. So I believe as a favorite character, maybe Luke because he had a speeder, then he had an X-wing, and of course,
Aside from
He
the
was a pilot.
series varying from the story and such, do you have a particular series that you enjoy?
You mean TV on TV? I like the Mandalorian. The first season was pretty cool, and I loved how they really, or at least this was my feeling. They were making a Western. You felt this Western and the duels, and so from the TV shows, I would say the Mandalorian and the Clone Wars. The Clone Wars, I think, the last chapter of the Clone Wars. I think it's really, really good. That I don't know if I hope I'm not spoiling, no spoiler alerts, but you know that last scene where Vader is walking and he finds the clone helmet and the lightsaber and that scene is fantastic. So I love how, of course, there's chapters in the Clone Wars that you could skip, but I think that and I'm missing another one, the Clone Wars from Cartoon Network, that I believe they're not canon anymore. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I love the cartoons. I love the drawings. I love the stories. I love how one particular thing I love is how my mind is has the guy with many lightsabers.
General Grievous.
Grievous. How he's choked. You know how he and then when the next movie starts, he has these problems breathing, but it comes from the cartoon, no? And so I love that sequence. But mostly the drawings and Ventress in that cartoon, I think is fantastic. Mm-hmm. I also like in the Clone Wars all the lore about the witches, you know, this and how they take
Darth Maul.
Darth Maul,
bring him back to the witches of Dathomir, I think they're called.
Yes, exactly. And so I enjoyed that pretty much. So there's a lot out of there. I mean, besides, of course, that's Lucas still. That's still Lucas.
What did you think of Andor?
Andor, I liked it. I think it's of the group of the series. I think is one of the better ones, I would say.
There was Obi-Wan and there was Mandalorian. There
Obi-Wan. Was... I thought with it was a great opportunity, and it was a great character, and it wasn't my favorite. But also there's I didn't watch the new one, the last one. Acolyte.
It's taken a beating. It's like every new version that comes out, the critics or the criticism just becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And I mean, they've just kind of beaten the pulp out of Acolyte here to the point where they said, nope, we're not even going to do another season.
Yeah, maybe, maybe it's for another generation but I don't relate anymore. That's maybe what happens. And not putting nothing against it, but really I don't relate to it anymore. And I guess that's it. I do like the mostly, as I mentioned, the cartoon. Rebels I liked. Rebels I thought was pretty cool. I liked it.
What do you think of Diego Luna being in
He's a very good actor. He started very young in Mexico in soap operas. But he does serious theater. He in that regard, and very serious movies. So I guess he's a good actor. I thought he did a good job in Rogue One, and so yes, no, I think he played the part well, and I always find it funny to think that he would be in Star Wars and now he has an action figure made after him. But I think he does a pretty good job in what he does. I did like Andor very much. I like Rogue One, as we discussed. But
and then you said, going back a little bit, you said you had a Cantina playset that was still boxed, unopened. Would that be the blue snaggletooth? Would be inside of that?
No, it's right here. Yeah. No, because I think the blue snaggletooth would be in the Cantina, in the one that it's like a cardboard with that it's called the
The Sears exclusive?
Yeah, Sears exclusive, right?
Right. Okay.
Yes.
So you don't
Yeah.
have the Sears exclusive one.
I
You just
don't.
had, okay,
That's
right.
still in the wish list, and Blue Snaggletooth is still in the wish list.
Really?
Yeah. But well, yes, it's because then I started focusing more in the first
First
12.
12. Right.
Yeah, but I mean that's one that you always want to have there. It's one of those that you can always tell a nice story about, no?
There's one hiding back behind the red snaggletooth somewhere up here.
Oh
So
yeah, I see
there is a
it.
blue one back there.
Right. Oh wow. Yes, there it is. That's that's to get it in nice condition is
It's
not
hard.
easy. Yeah.
Sure. But I was thinking that you had it still in the box, which was even harder,
No,
but
no,
only
I
the Sears
don't.
exclusive.
No,
Yeah, so
no.
this case behind me, this holds 99 action figures, but there's not a place for the blue snaggletooth. And I think with the blue snaggletooth, you said it earlier, it's exactly 100 figures.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the original run.
Yes. Yeah, yes. That's a fantastic display. The one you have, yeah.
Well,
Looks good.
Alfonso, you have a fantastic collection there,
Oh, thank you.
displayed beautifully. You're very knowledgeable in all the things. You excel at all the old vintage stuff. You're very familiar with all the various card backs. I congratulate you on what you've
Oh, thank you.
collected. I would like to ask this final question,
Sure.
regardless as to, or not regardless, but it doesn't matter whether it's in collecting or what you're looking for, but what advice would you pass along to other collectors?
Oh, well, it's difficult because what I would say is collect in a sense first that it doesn't become a stress for you, that it really is something, it's a pleasure, it's a love. Do it because you love it, and do it with with the simplicity and with the love that you had when you were younger, or whatever really made you love these movies and these toys. It's not easy. It's easier said than done because as we mentioned, you start getting sophisticated and what satisfied you in a time, and then you start wanting more, and whatever you thought was going to be the pinnacle of your collection is not anymore, and you start growing. So this advice is also for me is enjoy it and really collect for, I wouldn't say collect for yourself in the sense of being selfish, but sometimes you can think about what other people say or what you have, and that's not the fun part about it. It's more sharing, and so I would say that would be mostly it. Is don't let it be a burden because it can be. It can be. Enjoy it because that's why you do it. That's why it started, and so when it starts being a burden, then it's maybe when you have to go back and think again, why are you doing? But having moments like this, then that's why you do it.
There you go,
Sharing, it's a great way of knowing new people, of telling stories,
and the camaraderie amongst all the collectors.
Yeah, that's, you just mentioned it. I mean, let's be. Star Wars is, at the end of the day, is a movie. Yeah, I mean, we enjoy it, we love it. But I think we have to keep it in that level, and we really love it. I know. I'm trying to be politically correct. You should have been. You should.
It builds so much of my
my
core. There's like a foundation somewhere inside here, and that foundation is Star Wars. So when you start messing it up a little bit, it messes up with the foundation a little bit. So
I know.
To me, it's a real thing. But
I'm trying to be polite. At the end of the day, I get very upset as well.
Right.
Especially when, yes, for
you
instance,
use Star Wars for a message or something. It's like we don't need it for a message. That's something else. We need Star Wars. From what I understand, what's coming up with Jon Favreau and doing kind of the Mandalorian into the movie theaters, I think we're going to get something special. It will be CGI, obviously, at this point, but I think we're going to get a reunion of the original characters as well. So that would be nice.
That'll be nice. And I agree with you. You just put it, it's when you saw episode 4, you were not thinking about so many things. You just were there for the ride, and at the end of the day, that's
what you want.
What you want, yes. But
fantastic. Great information, great collection. Really pleased to be able to share this with you and see what you have and discuss all these things back and forth. So again, thank you very much for participating.
On the contrary, thank you, and thank you for the interview and for giving me this experience of talking with you guys. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Now, really, really an awesome collection. I can't wait to see all the things that happen into this 4th box here that you send over to Jim so we can see them as we're talking about them. For the people that are on YouTube that are watching this interview, if you've made it this far in the interview, obviously there's something that you like about this interview. So go ahead and give us that like. That's one of the best ways to spread this interview to other people. And also subscribe to the channel. This isn't our first interview. We've done many of these with a lot of different information. Subscribe to the channel. Look back at some of the other older interviews. A lot of information about how people are displaying, what they're collecting, everything that you get in between. Alfonso, again, we really appreciate you sharing with us. May the force be with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Likewise. Thank you. Bye.